I know we're getting a little bit of a late start, and I just wanted to apologize for that. As it turned out, a number of the people who were going to participate in the program tonight live down south of here, and there is a lot of snow. It's still just snowing and snowing and snowing down there, or at least it was when I left a little while ago. So we're having to do some last minute kind of shifting of who's doing what. So thank you for your patience. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much, Sister Bahia. That gives me a chance to quote my most favorite, shall I say, phrase: "Blessed are the flexible, for they will never be bent out of shape." I love that insight. So we're being very flexible today. So my dear friends, as I look at the program here, I'm supposed to welcome all of you, a very, very heartfelt welcome for coming to this wonderful circle of love. And this is Interfaith Community Sanctuary, the oldest wooden frame church building in Seattle, built older than I am, 1890. So today we're celebrating what is called the Night of Destiny. That's when, in the year 610, after birth of Christ, of course, the gift of the first verses of the Qur'an was transmitted or revealed to the Prophet Muhammad through the agency of Angel Gabriel. So having said that, let me start by reciting the first chapter of the Quran. And I always tell this to people. The good news is it's a very short chapter. So join me in chanting HU. This is an Islamic version of Aum to invoke divine presence. And keep on going. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم الصراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. Okay, my dear friends, the story of the Night of Destiny. The year is 610 CE, and here is a young man, 40 years old, named Muhammad, who despaired very much of the savagery of his time. In fact, that era, 7th century in Arabia, was called the age of Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah means savagery. A lot of oppression of the poor, a lot of bloodshed being shed. But most of all, the terrible crime of infanticide. Young girls just born, buried alive. And this disturbed the young man prophet so much, he would go in the mountains to meditate, in the caves, in Mecca. So on one particular night, and usually his wife Khadija would accompany him, but this time he was alone, he was meditating in the cave in Mecca, very despondent about the savagery, the killings, the abuse of people who are poor, marginalized. And then suddenly he saw a huge light approaching him. And he was very confused. Am I hallucinating or is this real? But the light came closer and closer and closer to him and had a voice. It said, I am Angel Gabriel. And made a command, Iqra. This is a very famous word, Iqra, meaning say something, recite. And we don't know exactly what the prophet said. Some said he said, I'm unlettered. But he was so, not only astounded, bewildered, thinking he had gone insane. He ran down the mountain. running all the way into the arms of his beloved wife Khadija, perspiring, sweating, trembling, saying, I've gone insane. And his beloved wife Khadija said, no, you're the most sane person I know. And she wrapped him in blankets and stayed with him, nurturing him, nourishing him, consoling him. Please come. Yeah. And then, after consoling, nurturing him, she made him feel stable, then rushed to meet or consult with a distant cousin, Waraqa, who was actually a Christian. And he was blind, was a seer, S-E-E-R. And said, Waraqa, tell me what's happening. This is what happened to my husband. And Waraqa goes into a trance and says, your husband is going to become a prophet. Send him back. So she came back, and somehow, consoling him, loving him, tender caring him, she persuaded him to return to the mountains. Some, in Islam they say she moved from a knowledge of the tongue to a knowledge of the heart. She moved from a persuasion of the tongue to a persuasion of the heart. And he went back thinking, my hallucination is over. But once again, that light, and once again that command, Iqra. But this time he felt this incredible squeezing within him, and words poured out of his mouth. And this happened for 23 years, sometimes in response to a question, sometimes unexpectedly, but it was always very, very painful. He would say, I'm hearing before the onset, I'm hearing the buzzing of bees or the chiming of bells. It's almost like, oh no, I don't think he said that, but oh my God, not again, And he would go into a trance, the words would come out, his family and friends would write them down, and that has become the Qur'an. You might not agree with the Qur'an or the contents, but every scholar of Arabic agrees, those who like Islam, don't like Islam, that there is no body of literature in the Arabic language that comes even remotely close to the beauty of the language of the Qur'an. So having said that, Muslims, they celebrate the Night of Destiny because they say they are so grateful for the gift of the Qur'an. So this is a good chance for me and for you just to become very still and ask ourselves, in my life, what am I grateful for? What are my blessings? There's some verses in the Qur'an that says, everything which exists on the earth and the heavens extols the limitless glory of God. Everything is extolling the limitless glory of God. And so when we express gratitude, we are joining a cosmic chorus and we feel uplifted. I'll be quiet now and just be with that for a few moments. Thank you, my friends. Now the recitation of the Qur'an.
Well, as Ann Bahia mentioned, our reciters are stuck in are snowbound in West Seattle and South Seattle. So I will be reading, my name is Sally Joe, I'm co-minister here at Interfaith Community Sanctuary, and I will be reading the passage that was going to be recited in Arabic. I'm sorry that I can't do that for you. But this passage, this translation, is by Lex Hickson, who is well known for his interpretation and his rendition of the Quranic passages. So this is what he has translated. My noble messenger, please teach humanity to celebrate with awe the first moment that the source of light began to radiate its luminous Qur'an through your earthly being. This is the moment during your solitary mountain retreat when you plunged into divine mystery on the night of power, and your personal awareness first received the resplendent words of Allah. It is impossible to conceive the true import of this night of power, which is mystically manifest each year, sometime during the most holy month of Ramadan, on the hidden anniversary of your awakening to the radiant Qur'an. To enter spiritually into the shining realm of this night of nights is more powerful than practicing intense prayer for 1,000 months. During this transcendent night, by the permission of Allah, angelic beings descend freely into human hearts in response to every prayerful longing. Within the unfathomable mystery of this night, Allah's own light can be received directly by souls who are immersed in the ecstasy of true contemplation. The perfect peace of the eternal source descends completely into the creation during the night of power. This miraculous transformation of the universe into paradise remains until the first glow of dawn. And that meditation is from the Holy Qur'an, chapter 97, verses 1 through 5. Thank you.
The chant. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah.
Actually, if you all don't mind, I'm going to sit for this. So, as you all know, we're here to observe this night that's sometimes called the night of power, the night of destiny, and to commemorate the first coming, the first download, so to speak, of the Qur'an. And in 12 days, I will be celebrating 20 years of being a practicing Muslim. And so I've gotten to watch this celebration of the Qur'an that we do during Ramadan. The whole month is for celebrating the gift of the Qur'an, but this night is it's I hesitate to use the parallel, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's an Islamic parallel to Christmas Eve. because in Islam, in a certain sense, Muhammad is Mary. In Islam, is the Mary, because Muhammad is the one who gives birth to the Quran, as Mary gave birth to Jesus. And so, and the story that Brother Jamal just told is that story of that night of what happens. And tonight, I want to talk about not just the night of destiny, but the gift of the Quran as I've experienced it in these 20 years of being a Muslim, almost 20 years now. So I want to talk about, in the two little sessions that I'm doing, I want to talk about two spiritual practices that I see as central to the season of Ramadan. And I will warn you, especially those of you who were born into or follow a tradition outside of Islam, please talk to other Muslims, because this is a very personal view of the season. And I always encourage people to get lots of different views of whatever I'm talking about, because I'm still relatively new Muslim, and know that there's so much that I don't know. So for this first talk, I want to talk about Ramadan as a house guest. And some of you are nodding, and I probably have talked about this before. I certainly have talked about it in our Friday prayer circle, that the Imam, the person who was my Imam when I first came into Islam, aside from Jamal, was a man named Benjamin Shabazz, Imam Benjamin Shabazz, and he was the one who introduced this image of Ramadan being our annual house guest. And she comes to our house, and she rolls up her sleeves, and I picture this house guest as definitely as feminine, and she comes in as a kind of auntie, and she helps us get ready to do an annual house cleaning of our hearts, to get rid of anything that is getting in the way of our relationship with Allah. Because our hearts are the guest rooms for Allah that Allah has given us. Each one of us has inside of us, we walk around with this room, this space that Allah wants to inhabit. And so we have, with the coming of the Qur'an into the world through the Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, we get introduced to this house guest. And the Quran and Ramadan as the house guest comes with great joy. It's as someone who still practices the Christian season of Lent, and this year you might know that Lent, the Christian season of Lent, began on the same day as Ramadan this year. For the first time since I've been a Muslim, they coincided, and the start coincided. And so this year I've been able to feel the difference even more in my body as I observe fasting for Lent and Ramadan. And Ramadan comes with a different kind of spirit. It's like, let's get you in shape. Let's get you in shape, and let's get everything out of the way between you and Allah. And she helps us clear off the rust in our hearts. That in one of the images in the Qur'an about spiritual trouble is that we get rust, our hearts get rusty, and they have to be de-rusted. And so Ramadan comes to help us do that. And we clear the room, we set up the room for her, so to speak, as we prepare for Ramadan. And when you're in Islamic settings, you know, the weeks before Ramadan arrives, all the talk is about getting ready for Ramadan's coming. I'm so glad Ramadan's coming. It'll give me time and space to look at some things that have been bothering me all year, and that I know I need to pay attention to, but life is so full, life is so busy, I haven't had the time. And so, to end this little talk, the practice of Ramadan, that is the basic practice of Ramadan is, as I'm sure most of you know, is the practice of fasting. And Muslims fast, who are observing the Ramadan fast from dawn, which is different than daybreak, which is something I found out since becoming a Muslim, that dawn comes before daybreak, and between dawn and sunset, there's no food intake, no food or drink intake. The question that Muslims get asked all the time, not even water? And you say, not even water. When you think about the original context for Islam, not drinking water, it's one thing not to drink water in Seattle for a day. It's another thing not to drink water in a desert. Just saying. It's a rigorous physical practice. And it's a deeply personal practice. And it's working from inside, deep inside your body. And the growling of our stomachs is a reminder of our utter dependence on Allah. And our hunger for food becomes the physical sign inside of our bodies of this ongoing hunger for God. One of my favorite psalms in the Tanakh, in the scriptures of Judaism, has a line that goes like this: as the deer longs for the water brooks, so longs my soul after you, O God. My soul is athirst for God, a thirst for the living God. When shall I come to appear before the presence of God? I was told early on that when I'm fasting for Allah. I'm fasting, not only am I hungry for Allah, but I'm doing it in answer to Allah's invitation. Allah wants me to fast because Allah wants me to be hungry for Allah. And wants me to answer this ongoing invitation from Allah to surrender to Allah. And so we don't do it, we don't fast for other people on other people's behalf. It's different from almsgiving, which keeps our money clean. You know, if we in Islam, you give money to keep it clean because if we hold on to money, we automatically get dirty, because we automatically get greedy. And it just happens. And I won't go off on how we're seeing it happening in this world today, to the, great destruction of the whole planet. But anyway, in Islam, we do that for the world. I mean, that almsgiving, we do something good for someone else. But fasting is the spiritual practice that is solely for Allah. And we don't do it for anyone else. And we intentionally create this vacuum that Allah then comes in to fill. And you get this sensation of Allah filling the vacuum. And it kind of whets our appetite for that process to happen outside of Ramadan, after Ramadan is gone. People begin to grieve the end of Ramadan about this time in Ramadan, because the experience is that intense. And it's no accident, the story, as I understand and remember the stories that I was told about Lailat al-Qadr, Muhammad was fasting on the night of Lailat al-Qadr. So that's another connection between this night and the whole season of Ramadan. And we are, to this day, the beneficiaries of the gift that Allah poured into that vacuum inside of Prophet Muhammad.
The next passage we will read from the Quran, from the meditation on the Quran, is from the chapter 53, verses 1 through 11. It's also a meditation by Lex Hickson. He calls it the call and enlightenment of the Prophet Muhammad. Cherished humanity, like the evening star that shines more and more brilliantly as night approaches, is my beloved Muhammad. This eternal light of prophecy and tender companion of all souls is not among those who have been led astray by wandering spirits, nor is he tainted by human error, nor is he speaking from personal initiative. The luminous Qur'an that descends through him is nothing less than the culmination of revelation, radiating directly into his secret heart from the source of awesome power and clear wisdom. The drama of this revelation was begun by the mysterious angelic emissary who appeared to my beloved Muhammad, first towering above the horizon, then drawing closer until its overwhelming radiance came to rest at the distance of 2 bows placed end to end, or even nearer. Through this angel of light, the source of light revealed to my devoted servant and messenger whatever needed to be revealed as his call to prophethood. The perfectly pure heart and mind of my beloved one could never harbor falsehood. This revelatory event is what he actually experienced. Would anyone be foolish enough to dispute what the Prophet of Allah perceived with his own eyes? Let's ponder that in silence for a few moments.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. So my dear friends, I talked about this amazing phenomena when Muhammad, when he became a prophet in the cave, he encountered angel Gabriel. He encountered an angel. So some sages say this is also a reminder that ours is a very, very mysterious world. The visible world and the invisible world. And the Quran says the invisible world is actually hidden from you by command of your sustainer. Which is why, Rumi, when he talks about the invisible world, he says, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. Hard as we might try, we can never grasp what is really happening in the invisible world. There are angels. In Islam, it's an article of faith. The first one is you believe in God. The second one is to believe in angels. And in fact, the Quran talks about another entity called jinn. Jinn, from which comes the word genius or genie. And who are these jinn? These are, the Quran says, people like us, but made not out of water and clay, made out of fire. And also invisible. So right here, there are angels, but there are also jinns all around, like human beings. They have marriages, they have dramas and melodramas in their life, they have courts, they have all kinds of interactions. So it's a very mysterious world, which is why I love the words of Rumi, who says, there is traffic and trade in those invisible realms. And he has a wonderful verse that says, flee not the invisible world, for it is a place of income. Flee not the invisible world, for it is a place of income. And this visible world is a place of expenditure. So Rumi actually says, if you really want to be fulfilled in life, joyous in life, have meaning in your journey, or the mysterious journey, over a lifetime, work equally in the visible world and also the invisible world. Whatever that means to you. Prayers, meditation, conversing with God. Okay, that's one aspect. The other one is, remember I said, the angel came and said to Muhammad, Iqra. And Muhammad was bewildered. But then he encountered the angel again, and again when the angel said, Iqra, this time astonishing words came out from inside of him. And that is the Quran. The point here is that there is tremendous potential in the human being. The Quran says, in the Quran there's a verse that says, Allah made the human being out of water and clay, and then put his breath, Allah's breath, into the human. The divine spark, you might say. And then asked the angels to bow to the human. And the angels initially objected. Then God said, you do not know what I know. Bow down to the human. Meaning there is tremendous potential in the human. Which led Rumi to, Rumi would also go into a trance. And he comes up with this verse about the human being. You are a ruby in the midst of granite. To each one of us, he says, you are a ruby in the midst of granite. How long will you continue to deceive us? For we can see the look in your eyes. So please return to the root of the root of the root of your real self. You don't believe that? Rumi says, look around you, look at nature. Bees know how to make nectar. Spiders know how to make a web. Birds know how to make a nest. They didn't go to school or university. How did they get that? How do they attained to that level. Human beings also, they have that capacity within them when they purify themselves and they go into silence. In fact, if you study Taoism, they say, you purify yourself and bide in silence, and the spirit of the Tao makes its home in you. Incredible potential the human being has. Okay, one last aspect. Silence. The Quran has its roots in the womb of silence. Muhammad, when he was not yet a prophet, he was meditating in the cave in total silence. In silence, all this happened. Again, if I quote Rumi about silence, Rumi says, silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is the absence of the little self. I, me. Then he goes on to say, silence is the language of God. Everything else is a poor translation. Silence is the language of God. Everything else is a poor translation. Another one, let me just quote one more. Rumi says, in silence, the branches of your intelligence grows new leaves. In silence, the branches of your intelligence grows new leaves. Okay, let's go into silence for a few moments.
The first of these two short readings for this time both come from, again, Lex Hickson's interpretations of the Quran. Well, actually, one comes from Lex Hickson and one comes from Camille Helminski's translations of the Quran. And the first one is from the 96th chapter of the Quran, the first 5 verses. And it's called, this is called by Lex Hickson, the inception of the Arabic Qur'an. My beloved Muhammad, thus begins the Arabic Qur'an that will flow powerfully throughout the rest of your lifetime from the source of love and wisdom. You must now recite and teach humanity to recite these primordial divine words. Every thought and actions springs only from Allah Most High. This is the majestic name for the source and goal of being, the creator and cherisher of worlds, the formless power who evolves every human form from a clot of blood. My beloved, recite as well with the intensity of your entire being this message to humanity from the ultimate source, who speaks through you. Allah is the all-merciful one who teaches with the mysterious pen the universal intellect, the instrument of revelation that inscribes within the secret soul of my servant and messenger this living Qur'an, unveiling to awakened hearts what is hidden from the eyes of mundane understanding. The second reading, which is a Quranic interpretation by Kamil Haminsky, is from the 7th chapter of the Qur'an, Al-Araf, and verses 204 to 205. And I neglected to say before I started reciting Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is what we normally say before we recite any passage from the Quran, which is with the name of Allah. And my translation of the next two words are my translation, the mother house of divine love, the flow of divine love. And so when the Quran is voiced, pay attention to it and listen in silence, so that you might be graced with God's mercy. And remember your sustainer humbly within yourself and with awe and without raising your voice in the morning and in the evening. And don't allow yourself to be unaware. Bismillah. The chant.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La ilaha illallahu. La ilaha illallahu.
The second image that I want to talk about as we think about not only the gift of the Quran, but the whole season of Ramadan, is an image that I don't actually remember when or how it came to me, but I have come to consider Ramadan as love school boot camp, what I call love school boot camp. And it sort of begins with what I was talking about in the last session, that Ramadan is this time when we get to struggle like people who are training to be soldiers. We get to develop the disciplines and the practices that make us able to deal with the world and to take Allah into the world with us. And the lesson we get to learn during Ramadan comes from a verse in the Qur'an that is, as far I have heard, and I don't know otherwise, is the only verse in the Qur'an that is immediately repeated. There are lots of repeated verses in the Qur'an, but this one it's said twice in the Qur'an in succession, and it goes like this: with difficulty comes ease. With difficulty comes ease. What Ramadan does is give us a time to train around that reality. That if we observe the Ramadan fast, if we observe that difficulty and then experience the ease that comes when we break the fast, the fasting is actually a spiritual exercise that helps us strengthen our muscles to take on the reality of difficulty, which is part of life. It's part of everyday life, but transform it into, oh, with this difficulty is going to come ease. I know how to make that transition from the difficulty I'm in into ease, and that has to do with surrendering to Allah. The practice in which we will engage, the practice of Ramadan in which we will engage very shortly, the breaking of the fast. Because with the fasting comes the breaking of the fast. And there's the ease that comes with the difficulty. There's the ease that comes with the difficulty. The rhythm of Ramadan is not just fasting, it's fasting and breaking the fast. You don't get any extra brownie points for fasting any longer than the prescribed time. You are supposed to break the fast. And you're not actually supposed to make the fast more difficult than it already is. In some communities, I've heard that, people say, well, I gave up. They just embellish on the fast. I don't even want to think about it because the fast is hard enough as it is. But this rhythm, we go from fasting, something we're doing in our individual bodies, in a certain sense, obviously on our own. That's punctuated by this communal practice, often communal practice, of breaking the fast with other people who have been fasting all day themselves. The joy of these iftar meals is remarkable. Is remarkable. I think the very first iftar, which is the name for the meal of the fast-breaking meal, I think it was at your house, Jamal, 20 years ago, and there's a spirit to iftars that is wonderful because we've been through a difficulty, or enough people have been through a difficulty, and that we get to share together and experience together that rhythm. With difficulty comes ease. With difficulty comes ease. It's part of a very, very deep pattern and rhythm in Islam that, for example, the weekly prayer, communal celebration of prayer in Islam happens in the middle of the workday on Friday. Do people come and then go home for the week, start their weekend? No, they do not. People come to prayer in the middle of the day, and it happens at the same time as the noonday prayer happens every other day of the week. But on Friday, you do it together. You do it together, and it's called Jumu'ah prayer, which comes from a verb that means to gather. It's the day that Allah gathers us together and reminds us once again, with difficulty. You just came from your job. And the call to prayer says, come to pray, come to pray, come to success. In that, come to refreshment, come pray, And because we all live these lives where we get immersed in realities that seem to be bigger than anything, anything that we, and especially in days like these. It's like, I don't think I know anybody who doesn't wake up in the morning and have some sense of, oh, okay, all right, this is what's going on. Just waking up to the news stories is enough to make you want to sleep for the rest of your life. But this rhythm in Islam that says, no, we come together in this middle of this workday to remind ourselves of what's really going on, who's really in charge, despite all evidence to the contrary. And that our being together and taking in that reality that Allah is the one. Allah is the one. Allah is the one. And Allah says, you don't do this just by yourself. Of course you do this inside of yourself. And you also do it with other people. It's not just something that's optional, that we do it with other people. And part of what happens when we come together and experience Allah together in the middle of our working lives, middle of our busy lives, is that we can see in other people, if we know something about the people we're praying with, we know the kinds of things they're facing and handling and dealing with in the outside world. And so we get to be a witness of each other as people who take Allah into the world. And that just circles round to us, it's a kind of, it comes back to us. The title of this presentation is the Waraka and Khadija in the program, and that refers to as in the part of the story that Jamal, Brother Jamal, started us off with, of the Night of Power. Khadija, even though she knew that her partner Muhammad was sane and knew that God was talking to him, she went to her cousin for verification. She went to her cousin, and indeed her cousin was a witness with her. Just that encounter is another example of how much we need one another to call out what's inside of us. To say, do you know how good it is to what you're saying to me in this moment? Do you know how beautiful the photographs you take are? Do you know what kind of a dancer? Have you ever watched yourself, been able to watch yourself dance? Do you know what gifts you have? Perhaps tonight can be a night of power for each one of us, a night of destiny for each one of us. Perhaps we can get a glimpse of ourselves through being with one another that will point out to us work Allah is doing inside of us that we are not yet in touch with. Who knows? I mean, this might be our night of destiny. I think we have some Khadijas and Warakas in the room. Perhaps you might be one of them. Our last Quranic reading. Oh, it's gone. Our last Quranic reading for the evening is from is a very short chapter from the Quran, and it's entitled Al-Asr, which is often translated as time, concerning time. But Asr is also the word for afternoon. And so in this interpretation, actually Lex Hickson entitles this, The Afternoon of the World. This is the afternoon of the world. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is the afternoon of the world whose life has begun to descend like the sun toward the final horizon where time ends. Human beings are caught in this descending movement, except for those whose minds and hearts constantly affirm the source of love and whose daily actions clearly express love. These are the intimate friends of Allah Most High, who encourage humanity to cherish the living truth and to remain patiently committed to the holy way of ceaseless prayer and praise.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La ilaha illallahu. La ilaha illallahu. Did you want to do the azan?
Shifting roles around here, so I've been asked to do the Adhan, which is the call to prayer. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu anna la ilaha illahu. Ashhadu anna la ilaha illahu. Ashhadu anna Muhammadin abduhu wa rasulah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadin abduhu wa rasulah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala falah. Hayya ala falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
At this point, we will pass around dates to break fast. And if you haven't been fasting, that's okay. You can enjoy the ritual with everyone else. And we will pass around water and break our fast. And then we will go into Islamic prayer, which is fairly short. And we'll bring out the prayer rugs. And everybody's welcome to either participate or watch or whatever. However you want to do that. If you would rather go downstairs and get ready to actually eat the meal, we do eat the meal after and break the fast. Those of us who are actually fasting, we actually go down and eat the meal after we do our prayers. And so everybody's welcome, and we'll go ahead and start that. I'll bring out the prayer rugs. Oh, and at this point, we have to say goodbye to our friends out in cyberspace. Hopefully, you will have your own meal and your own dates and your own water to break your fast and to enjoy your iftar meal with your family and friends at home. And if you are not with anybody, please do find somebody to call or be with even briefly so that you can experience the sense of community at this time of the evening, because we feel this is, as Bahia Ann was saying, this is a part of the gathering of the event and what the ease that comes after the difficulty. So